Hello, once again, this is Jennifer McGuire, and thanks as always for stopping by today. Today's video is all about see-through cards. Now, I've done videos in the past on see-through card elements, and I will link to one of those videos here, but today I'm kind of taking a different approach where there is like a window effect, so there's acetate in there. And I also have several examples using different types of dyes, so you can try this perhaps with any type of dye that you may have. So we'll cover background dyes, intricate dyes, basic dyes, all of the above. So I have several examples to share with you. Let's get started with this example here. So the front of the card is see-through, which allows you to see inside. For this card and two of my additional cards, I'll be using the Altnew Beauty Within stamp set. This is a gorgeous stamp set with outline images that you could color however you want. But what's really cool about this set is there is a coordinating stencil set, which allows you to do quick coloring. And I'm going to focus on that today. So you can see there are some great sentiments in here also. There are coordinating dyes available. And here is the insert that comes with the stamp set, so you can see some of the ideas that you can do using the set. Now, I mentioned that there is a coordinating stencil set, and this is what's really awesome about this. Check it out. There are the different layers to color in the flowers in the stamp set, or you can use them separately without the stamp set. So I'll show you both of the options. I'm really excited to see stencils making a comeback, especially with these layering designs, because stencils have a great price point, and you can use them front way or back way, get reverse images. You can use them with different mediums, so there's a lot that you can do with them. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a flower without the stamp set, just using the stencils, so I can show you how easy it is to do. I'm using an ink blending tool from Altenew. So this is a large ink blending tool. It's fantastic for covering areas very quickly, and you can do a soft amount of ink or a heavier amount of ink. I'm using these blue inks from Altenew. Any inks or any coloring medium would work for this. So if you want to use any kind of glaze or paste, you could even use that too. So I'm just using inks, and I'm starting by tapping over the stencil. You can either swirl it around, which you'll see me do a bit of, or tap, or kind of tap and pull it away a little bit. The reason I'm tapping here is there's some really intricate parts to this opening, and I don't want to mess them up. And that way I can also build the color up to get where I want it to be. If I go on with a heavy hand at first, then it might be too dark. So by starting light, I can build it up to where I want it to end up. So I ended up with a kind of soft amount of color here, and I made sure it wasn't perfectly even, and that it just gives you a little more variation in your result. And look how beautiful that is. Now these stencils are designed so that you don't have to rotate them and figure out how to line it up. If you have it here, where the flower's there, all you have to do is slide it to the next one. You don't need to rotate it, you just slide it, and look how easy it is to line up the other layers. So I'm going to go from this one to the second layer here. Easy to line up, just use some tape to mask off the edge. And then I'm coming in with a slightly darker ink. Now, you could do a one-layer card with this very easily. Just make sure you mask off the areas better than I did. I planned on cutting these out, so I didn't care if ink got around them. But you could use any kind of masking tape to mask off the other areas, so you can end up with a clean result. And now it's time for the third and final layer, and for this one I'll use my darkest blue ink. So if you're one of those folks who really likes the look of layered flowers with stamping, but you struggle with lining up the images or getting it with the results that you want, you might want to try the layering stencils, because these you can see through very easily to make sure it's lined up. So there's a lot less guesswork, and you end up with really beautiful layered images like the one that you see here. Isn't that gorgeous? And then the final step is to add the center of the flower. So with this, I could go back and stamp the outline on this and some of the other elements, like for the center of the flower that the stamp set includes, but I decided just to use the stencil set alone. So I'm hoping that Altnew does more of these, where you can use the layered stencils to create an image, and you don't need to use the stamp set with it unless you wanted to. So here you can see the final results of the beautiful flower. Now remember, stencils you can use either side. So with this, I could flip the stencil over and ink with the other side, and I'll end up with an image that's a mirror of the one I've already done. So here I have the original one, the blue. I'll flip the stencil over and layer it with some yellow colors. I'm going to skip through it because it's the same process, but you'll see I end up with an image that's the mirror opposite. So you can create a bigger cluster of flowers with different looking flowers by using both sides of the stencil. And I did the same on the left. There's another layering stencil in that set, and it creates the flower you see on the bottom. And if you flip the stencil over, it creates the flower you see at the top. In addition to the two stencils that create the flowers, there's the stencil that creates two clusters of leaves. I showed you the green inks that I used here. I always start with the lightest ink for the more open area, just as I would start with the lightest ink with the stamp that has the most solid area. So it's really the same process as you do with stamping. You're just using a stencil instead. So I'm here doing the two leaves at once. So I did the bottom layer of each leaf with the lightest color. Then I move on to the second layer and use the medium color. So one of the things I wanted to encourage you with this is if you're looking to kind of build up your stash with more things that you can play with, look at stencils, especially the new layering stencils that are coming out, because you can use many different mediums and many different products together with your stencils. And stencils have a great price point, as I mentioned. Okay, so after I have my leaves done, I have lots of different pieces. I could incorporate the stamping on these, but again, I decided to leave it. You get kind of a softer look by using the stencils alone. I could apply a heavier amount of ink if I wanted to. Now these are pretty easy to cut out, so you could cut these out by hand if you wanted. I'm just using the coordinating dies. So these dies line up with the stamps and the stencils, or if you use the stamp and stencils together. Off screen, I cut out all of my flowers and leaves, and I will share an example in a little bit with the stamping incorporated too, so stay tuned for that. But let's finish this one up. Now to create the center of my card here, I'm using the Altenew circled greeting dies. These are all sold individually. I just wanted to show you the different versions out there. For this card, I'll be using the thanks. Now, if you cut this from cardstock, you end up with this window with the word thanks stretched across it, which I think is really cool. But I thought I'd change it a little bit and use a slightly larger circle die with it. So what it'll do is cut the word thanks with a ring attached to it. So you can use your basic dies along with your interesting window dies or things like this to kind of get a different look. So I'll tape those together, and I'm die cutting it from navy cardstock. And I'll cut 3 of these thanks rings and glue them together so that they'll have a nice dimension and stand up pretty predominantly on the card. Now that we have all of the pieces ready for the front of the card, let's create the card itself. For this, I'm using the new Altnew layered geo cover dies. There's an A die and a B die. You can either use these together for a layered look or separately. I will use the die on the right for this card and the die on the left for an upcoming card. So you'll see both in action, but remember you could layer them together if you wanted to. I die cut the background die with the large opening twice from a light blue cardstock. And I also have a piece of acetate of the same size. It's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I also have a light blue note card that's top folding that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So all of these have the same size. This technique of creating a see-through card works great with any large background die. The first step is to cut off most of the front of your card, just leaving a tiny flap at the top that's about the same size as that bar across the top of your background die cut. So I'm using my trimmer to cut close to the fold line, but not all the way up to it. So you'll see I have this tiny little flap, and that little flap is about the same size as that bar across the top of our die cut. Onto this little flap, I will put strong adhesive. Now you have a few options of what you could use here, but since this will glue to acetate, I recommend using a strong double-sided tape. You can use a wide double-sided tape and trim off the excess, but I happen to have this really thin double-sided tape and it's a perfect size. So once I put that on there, I like to cut a little bit of an angle at the edges just so they don't stick out and they're not as noticeable. So I just trimmed off the edges. We have this little flap, and on the flap is some double-sided tape. Next, we need to put adhesive on the back of our die cut. You could use a variety of adhesives, but the fastest option for me was to just use tape runner on the back of it. I put it onto a non-stick work surface so that when I run my tape runner along it, the excess stays into the tape runner. It doesn't want to stick to that surface, so I don't end up with a mess. So I'm just putting some, especially on the edges, but then a little on the center. And now I want to adhere this to my acetate. Here's a little trick to lining up these two pieces together. The acetate and the die cut are the same size. So I'm putting my acetate in the corner of my scoreboard. You can also put it in the corner of your MISTI stamping tool. So the acetate's there. Now I'll take my die cut, adhesive side down, and put that in the corner too, and then press them together. And they're lined up and I don't have to fuss with it. It really makes it easy. Now we can remove the release paper from our little flap here. And I'll put this in the corner of my scoreboard. And now I can take the acetate side, put that down into the corner, and press it onto that exposed adhesive. So it's getting pushed onto that little flap. The die cut's on the top, the acetate's against that little flap, and now we have a see-through card. However, I think it looks better if you put another die cut on the inside. I'm cutting a little bit off the top of this extra die cut, just so that it doesn't get in the way of our flap. On this one, I'll put adhesive on the back once again, and then this will get glued on the inside of the card. This just helps to give a nice finished look. So I'll open up the card, line this up, and now the acetate is sandwiched between the two die cuts. It looks nice on the front and on the inside. And the top of this die cut I cut off so it's not in the way of that little flap at the top. And this is a nice, sturdy, see-through card. The other video that I did with see-through cards, I didn't use acetate, so either is an option. If you have a really intricate die cut for a background, this is, I think, a better option because it gives it some stability. Next, I used some of the other little images from the same stamp set and stamped it with a really light bluish gray. This is Arctic from Altnew. And then I used the coordinating dies to cut them out. I thought these would be nice to add onto our flower cluster on the front of the card. So now it's time to arrange everything on the card and also make sure that we leave a spot in the inside that allows us to write a personal sentiment. So I'm using the center of the die cuts and I'm gluing one onto the acetate on the inside. This way you don't see all the things we glue on from the inside. It kind of gives it a nice clean look. Now this is a circle die cut that I die cut from white cardstock. It's the circle die that I used along with the thanks die to create the ring. So it's the same size as the thanks ring. So I glued that onto the front of the card. Now here's our thanks ring. I'm putting it liquid adhesive only on the ring itself, but not on the word thanks. So it'll just be adhered by the outside edge. And you can see that lines up nicely with the white die cut circle. Now I want to make sure I have a spot on the inside to write my personal message. So I have an extra inside die cut. I put adhesive on the top of it. Now I'm just lining it up with the center on the inside of the card. Then I'll close the card and that adheres it right in the center behind the circle on the front of the card. So I know if I write on that circle, you won't see the message from the outside of the card. I added a little bit of dot coloring to the center of my flower just for some dimension. And now I will start tucking all these little pieces in behind the word thanks. That's why I didn't put glue on the back of the thanks word, so we could tuck these in. I decided I needed a smaller cluster of flowers, so I trimmed these little leaves off our bigger one. And again, I'll tuck that in so that it peeks out from the ring. I used light adhesive on these, but I'll go back and squeeze a little bit of this strong liquid adhesive behind everything just so I can be sure that they'll stay put once I'm sure I like where they're positioned. And I also tucked some of those little die cut pieces in there. When I'm done, I added some aqua shimmer pen to the thanks die cut so it would be shiny, have some sparkle to it. And then for extra shine and dimension, I added mini glossy accents to the thanks die cut also. That took a little bit of time to dry. I let it dry for a few hours. And when I came back, it's got this sparkly shine that really catches the light nicely. So here's the completed card. You can see through the outside edge, which is a fun surprise. If I wanted to, I could do a contrasting color on the inside so you could see that see-through more, but I wanted it to be subtle for my example. I had fun doing this one, so I decided to make another very similar but different colors. And in this case, instead of using the thanks circle die, I used the hugs. And the top die cut of the hugs is from gold cardstock. So I thought it was a fun way to kind of add some shine to it. You could make a darker, higher contrast look like this, but I thought the gold really caught the light nicely and was just another fun option. Once again, there is a circle on the inside where I can write my personal message, and nobody will see it when the card is closed. Now, I promised I would show you what those stencils flowers look like when you combine them with the stamp set. And this uses the other of the Geo cover dies, the one with the smaller opening. For this, I stamped the outline of the flower and the leaf that I wanted to use on the card. Then I came in with the ink, once again doing the same process that I showed you earlier, layering all of the different colors using the stencil. So I could have just stamped it and colored it by hand, but for me it's a huge time saver to use those stencils. I followed the exact same process as I did with my last example, where I started with the top folding note card, 2 background die cuts, and a piece of acetate, all that are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I did the same process as before, so I'm not going to show it again, but I created the little flap with the acetate sandwiched between the 2 die cuts, and I once again have a note card with the see-through front. Remember, you could mix up the colors to have more contrast, but I really wanted a subtle background. The center of this card is much simpler than the last one, but I did stamp Hello Beautiful at a curve, and I wanted to show you how I did that. I have a die cut circle here, and I'm putting my sentiment in the area I want it to be, close to the edge of the circle. Now I'm using the negative space of the circle to help me move the stamp and kind of arch it. I just use my fingers to arch it. This is easy to do in a stamping tool like this or on an acrylic block. And that way I know that it's arched just right to stamp right along the edge of the circle. So that's a nice trick that you can do with longer sentiments like this that are smaller, so you can stamp at an arch. I matted the white circle with the sentiment on a slightly larger yellow die cut circle. And I have another yellow die cut circle of the same size that I'll glue onto the inside of the card so that you don't see through that, so it looks nice from the inside too. I then have a white circle I have adhesive on the top of. I'll line that up, close my card onto the adhesive, and now I have a spot to write my personal message on the inside. All you need to do then is add your flower and leaf and a few little pearls, and you're good to go. So you can see how any background die would really work well for this, but I think it's best if I demonstrate with a different type of background die, one that's a little more open spaced, to show you that it works well with that too. So let's do this example here. The background die here has a lot more see-through space, but it works great for the see-through front card. Let's start by doing the elements on the front of the card. For that, I use the new Altenew Simple Nesting Flower Dies. There are a bunch of flower dies here and the flower centers and leaves that you can die cut and layer together to get different sizes. You can make them as layered as you want. It's really fun to see all the different mixes you could get. So I went through my scraps and I picked some pinks and purples and then some coral colors and some greens. And I created the little flowers that you see here. Now I did do a little bit dimension to these. So what I like to do is glue down flat with liquid adhesive part of it, so like at the bottom of this leaf. And then at the tip of the leaf, I put a little bit of foam tape. So that gives a little variation in dimension. So you can see how the tip of this lighter green leaf kind of pokes up a little bit from the tip of the darker green leaf. Now that our flowers are all assembled, let's go ahead and create the see-through card. For this, I used the new Altnew Tangled Loops background die. I thought the playful look of this would go really well with the layered flowers that I created. Using this die, I created 2 white background die cuts. I also have a piece of acetate of the same size, which, by the way, you can buy acetate. I'll link to some, but you can just use recycling packaging that you have. And then I also have a top folding note card. This is Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock, and all of this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Once again, we need to cut off most of the front of our card, just leaving a tiny flap at the top. Same thing as last time. This works really well with background dies that have a frame around the edge. On that folded flap, I'm putting my double-sided tape. Anything strong works here. And then I'll take one of our white die cuts and put adhesive on the back of it. I again just decided to use tape runner because it's quick and easy to do, and I really don't need adhesive on all of it. It'll lay nice and flat. Once again, I'll use the trick of using the corner of my scoreboard, put my acetate down. Now I'll put into the same corner my die cut, and that glues them together nicely. Now we can add this onto the little flap. Once again, I'll use the corner to help me out. I'll remove the release paper, take the die cut with the acetate on the back, and press that right into the exposed adhesive. So we have our see-through front, and just to make it look nice, we'll take another die cut, cut the top off of it just a little bit, put glue on that, and then line it up on the inside of the card. Now this is one of those die cuts that's not symmetrical, so this time I'm putting glue on the top of the die cut. That's what you saw me do there. It's on the top, so that when I put it down on the inside, it lines up with the die cut on the front. So you can see that gives it a nice finished look. And in this case, our see-through die cuts are white cardstock, and the inside is a light gray. It's that Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock. So there's a little bit of contrast, and it allows the white to show up a bit more. Next, I use the Altenew Nesting Oval dies. These are cool dies because they actually create a little impression of an oval right on the inside edge, so it gives a nice finished look. And I die cut 3 from white cardstock. On one of those ovals, I'm gluing down my leaves and my flowers. I'm using a little bit of liquid adhesive because that allows me to move them, and then once I'm happy, they'll dry nicely there. I can always squirt a little bit more behind each if I need to. On the back of that oval, I'm putting double-sided tape. I kind of fold and bend the double-sided tape around the edge, and even put one down the middle because I don't want this to come undone. And then we'll add that right into the center front of our card. Once I have that there, I can open up my card and add my other 2 ovals. One will get glued right behind the cluster that we have on the front of the card, just to cover it so it looks nice. So I'll put some double-sided tape on that too. I'm using double-sided tape here because it has to adhere over the acetate and that die cut. I want it to stay put. Now the third oval, I'll use adhesive on, put it down with the adhesive facing up, close the card, and it's lined up nicely. Here's the completed card. I added a sentiment strip to the center, which I'll show you in my next card how I created that. And then I also added some yellow pearls. By adding those other 2 ovals to it, it gives a nice finished look, and the front of the card has that fun see-through feature. Okay, now let's do some examples that don't involve background dies, but use other types of dies. This is a great design for any kind of smaller die you have, especially those that are intricate. I'm using the new Altnew leaf mix. Look at all of these leaf dies that are included in the set. There's so many. I will use them on this card and my next card also. So there's a solid leaf, an outline of a leaf, and then all these other types. So you can layer them and do fun things with them. The little loopy one would be fun to just die cut and tuck behind some stamped flowers. Lots of things you can do with this. I picked 3 and I'll die cut those to create the see-through feature on my card. I have a side folding note card that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 that I created from Hero Art's Meadow cardstock, and I have a piece of white cardstock that's slightly smaller. We need to die cut through both of these layers to do our see-through front card feature. So here's a trick that I do. I tape my dies in place wherever I want them to be, put a little bit of masking tape here just to make sure that it doesn't shift as we die cut. Then I'll put a little bit of adhesive on the front of my green note card, just a little bit. Tape runner's perfect for this, just to hold the white in place on the front of our green note card. Now I'll open up my note card and run this through my die cut machine. The dies will cut through the white layer and cut through part of the green layer. This is very heavyweight cardstock, especially the white, so it's not going to cut through both layers, but that's okay. So first I remove the dies, and then I'll remove the white piece from our green note card. You just need to be careful, but it doesn't matter if it tears the front of the note card because we're going to glue it back in place when we're done. Now I'm just going to remove all these little white pieces that are attached to it, but you can see that the dies made an impression on the green note card. So now I'll take the dies and kind of pop them into that impression to make sure they're lined back up with it. It pops in kind of like a puzzle piece. Once I have the dies popped in place, I'll tape them there and run it through my die cut machine again. And this time it'll cut through the green note card. And we'll have a white piece with the flowers die cut in the same position as on our green note card. So when we layer them together, they'll layer perfectly to create these 3 windows. So using that trick of die cutting together and then peeling them apart and die cutting again is really a great way to make sure they line up. Next, we need a piece of acetate, and this needs to be a bit smaller than the white piece. So I think I did like 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and we'll glue that onto our note card. So I'm putting some adhesive around the opening on the front of our note card, and I'll lay the acetate onto that. Then we can put adhesive on the back of the white piece and lay that on top. So the acetate is sandwiched between the two layers, and you can see through to the inside of the card. Next, I need to create the leaves that will go in the windows. So I use the same 3-leaf dies that I used before. I die cut 3 of each, and I'm gluing them together for a stacked look. To glue these intricate die cuts together, I used E6000 spray adhesive. So I have the 3 layered die cuts, and I'm just gluing them right onto the acetate in the opening. And I used spray adhesive for this too, and it actually dried nicely on the acetate. So now all we need to do is add a sentiment to the front and something to the inside. So for the sentiment, I used the Altnew featured sentiment die set. I'm really excited about this. The reason is there are sentiment dies out there, sentiment strip dies, but they're either really rounded edges or they're squared edges. This has a soft rounded edge, which I'm really excited about. I don't know why. It's these simple things that make me happy with crafting. And there's a lot of different sizes, slightly wider, slightly thicker. You can find pretty much a die to go with any sentiment that you use. So I use this Altenew sentiment strips stamp set that I've used many times in videos. I white heat embossed on black cardstock, and I'm using one of those featured sentiment strip dies to die cut it. After I did so, I die cut 2 additional black cardstock strips and glued those to the back, so this has nice dimension. I wanted it to be nice and sturdy. And you'll see on the top layer is our white heat embossed sentiment. This is what I used on the last card too, the same stamp set and the same die. So I'll glue that onto the front of the card, and then in the inside of the card, I created a mini card. It's made from silver glitter cardstock. The reason I put a mini card on the inside is so that I would have a place to write inside of it without it showing through those windows that are at the center of our card. I also added a sentiment strip there in the inside. So here you can see my little silver glitter note card that I glued to the inside. I have this extra sentiment strip here. I'll put adhesive on the back of this and then line it up with the sentiment strip that's on the front of the card. I can see through those windows. So watch, I'll put it face down onto it with the adhesive facing up. Line those 2 strips up so you don't see it when we close it. Close it and press it down, and that puts the sentiment strip onto the silver glitter note card, and you don't see it when the card's closed. So when you look through the front of the card, you see that fun silver glitter, but when you open it up, you see that's a window with the little mini card inside. So if you want to do windows that are at the center of the card and don't have anything to kind of block your sentiment in the inside, this is a good trick. Just put a little mini card there. Okay, my next example shows using a smaller die once again and kind of setting it off to the side so you can write a personal message inside below it. So you can see the window is this little burlap looking piece. For this, I used the new Altnew Burlap texture die. Really like this one because you can die cut it, put it behind a cluster of flowers or die cuts, and it just adds the look of texture, adds a little bit of interest. I have a top folding white note card that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I have some ivory cardstock that's slightly smaller. I'll use this die to cut through both of them using the same trick I showed you on my last card. So I put a little adhesive on this so it lines up with the center of our card. So again, this piece is slightly smaller, so there's a little white trim. It's kind of hard to see there. I'll take this die, and I thought it'd be fun to have it kind of hang off the edge a bit so it's the top corner of our card. I'll open this up and run it through my die cut machine. The first pass through will cut through that ivory cardstock, the top layer. So I'll just carefully remove the die and then remove that ivory layer. Those little bits between the little burlap openings will kind of stay stuck to the white note card just from the pressure. All you have to do is scrape them off. You can use a tool or just use your fingernail. There will be an impression in your white note card, so you can take the die and pop it into that impression, tape it in place, and run that through the die cut machine. The second pass will cut through this white note card. So it takes 2 passes, but you end up with a white note card and the ivory piece with the die cut positioned in the same place. So now we have the 2 pieces here, and we can glue those together with acetate between. So I have another piece of acetate. I just cut it to be slightly bigger than that opening. I'm putting adhesive on the back of the ivory piece. I'll lay my acetate right into it up against the edge of the card. Then once again, we'll put adhesive on this and add it to the front of our white note card. Again, acetate, I recommend just looking at packaging. Any kind of thick acetate works great for this, even thin acetate, because it's really not providing much support here. It's just giving us that see-through option. I also used the Burlap texture die to cut from some craft cardstock. And on that die cut, I sprayed the E6000 adhesive, and then I will put that right into the opening, right on top of the acetate on the front of our card. I'll put my MISTI on that to just hold it in place while it dries. And then I also created another layered leaf using the same leaf die set. So I used a solid leaf, the outline leaf, and then this intricate leaf die, glued those together in 3 different colors of green cardstock. Then this one here that has the little berry looking things here, I die cut that 3 times from white cardstock and glued those together. I'll turn this gold in a few minutes, but first, our note card is dry now, so I can trim off the excess of that burlap and check out the window that we have there that allows you to see on the inside. Once again, I want the inside of my card to look nice, so the white die cut that we have from creating the note card, I can actually glue that in place. So I can glue that onto the acetate on the inside, and now it looks much nicer there too. Okay, so now let's finish creating our little leaf. I told you that I was going to do some gold heat embossing on it to give it a really smooth, shiny look. Here's a trick that I do for that. I have a piece of scrap paper. I put a little adhesive on it to form a handle. I then pressed VersaMark ink firmly over that die cut. And by the way, that die cut is 3 white die cuts stacked together. And I'm putting on some gold embossing powder. You could use any specialty embossing powder for this and get a really cool look. I just decided to go with gold. So I heat set that, let it cool for a few seconds, and then I pressed my VersaMark ink pad on it again. Make sure the embossing is cool before you do it. If it's still hot, it'll just ruin your VersaMark pad. So now I'm adding more gold embossing powder, heat setting it, letting it cool, and pressing the VersaMark ink pad on it again, and heat embossing again. I did 5 layers of gold embossing, and it gives this really beautiful kind of domed look to your die cut. It makes it look like a gold accent instead of paper. Little things like this can really make a big difference on a simple card. Okay, so let's assemble everything. I'm putting some strong double-sided tape on the back of our little layered leaf here, and then we'll add that right onto the burlap where the see-through part is. Then I have another leaf that I'll glue on the inside so that we hide everything once again. So I put double-sided tape on that, and then I actually used some liquid adhesive. You can experiment with whatever adhesives you may have. Now we need to add our little gold element that we made. Liquid adhesive is best for this because I really want it to stay put there. So I put liquid adhesive on the back, laid it right onto our little leaf on the front. Now as that dries, I decided I wanted to add something on the inside of my card that matched the outside. So I have another craft die cut here. I put adhesive on it too. The adhesive is facing up towards the camera. I'm lining it up and then closing my card on it. And this puts another one of the die cuts on the inside of the card, and it lines up through the window. So it just kind of pulls the pattern to the inside. I have another layered die cut that I did here, adhesive facing up towards the camera. Press it closed, and now we have a leaf there. When the card's closed, it looks like everything's just on the front of the card. But when you open it up, there's more on the inside. And then I can know to write my sentiment underneath that on the inside. I created a bow from some old ribbon that I had. I'm using a little drop of liquid adhesive behind the knot of the bow. And I want to hold that in place, so I'm using my iCrafter self-closing tweezers. So when you let go of these, they pinch closed. So I can pinch that knot so that it dries in place, which is really a nice thing to do because sometimes the bow won't want to stay put while it dries. So here's the completed card. I did stamp a sentiment. I'll show you the set in just a moment. But here you can see how you can peek through to the inside that's white. Now you could put a contrasting color in there, and I wonder if I did this card again, I might. You could put green in there so it shows through, but this is what's really cool. Check out the blue. A soft blue cardstock on the inside would be really lovely. But I didn't want to redo the card at this point, but next time that's what I would do, is a different color on the inside. So this has that little bit of see-through element that's a nice focal point for the leaf and the sentiment. So think about dies that you may have that you could do a see-through element, or a background die that you may have that allows you to do a see-through entire front of a card. You could do any kind of intricate dies work great for this, especially if you're using that acetate to give it some support like I did in this video. I also thought this sentiment was just perfect these days. There are so many people that I miss seeing, so they can't wait to see you again is one that I think I'll be using a lot, and it's from this Altnew Amaryllis stamp set. I buy an Amaryllis for my dad every Christmas, so I'm really excited about this set because I can make some cards for him and be extra meaningful. You can see how this stamp set can be used to create the layered flower. I just used a sentiment from it. There's lots of great sentiments in it, but I wanted to show you what you can do with it. Okay, there you have it. Many different ways to do see-through cards. At least the front of the card is see-through. Be sure to check out the other video where I actually create see-through cards where the entire card is see-through. So it's just different options for using your dies creatively. If you're interested in the products I use, I always provide a link below. In fact, I have one link that allows you to click and see all the different products I used, if that's helpful to you too. Thanks for watching. In the middle are a couple other videos you might like, and I hope you'll return again soon. Take care.